Hey, Christina here. Welcome to my crystal art series. Today I will be taking you on a journey behind the process of my Ignite Your Inner Knowing piece. Let's go. So this is my mood board and pretty much everything that I was pulling off from. My inspiration really honed into the Moroccan vibes. The reason why was when staring at some of the images of the Carnelian stone, a lot of the imagery that I was seeing was the desert, the Moroccan villages and their structures, architectures, anything in that nature. It really gave me a very warm feeling, as well as the feeling of the Great Canyon. So the shapes of the canyon and the colors that they have in the environment, they're super warm and they have like this red orange color to them. So they're very significant in their tones, especially in the Moroccan culture. A lot of the warm red orange tones just really speak to that culture too. And in my investigations, I was really looking at other things that really made me think about warmth and some of the feelings that I was getting when looking at the stone. So I also saw a volcano within the stone because of the rings that it was creating within the stone itself. It almost had like a ring of fire, where that made me start to think about the volcanoes and how they are structurally made. So that was very interesting, the way my mind was traveling into these certain areas of the world. So Moroccan culture, volcanoes, the Great Canyon, fire, the desert, a candlelight where the rim of the candle is melting and it creates little craters. I was also looking at flowers for some reason too, because of the shape that the lines were making within the stone. It was almost like the edge of the petals, and I thought that that was really neat. And the flower itself is always expanding, so I really liked that story about we're growing and expanding. And that was something that I really wanted to talk about in this piece. And of course, the Carnelian stone, because we need to understand what these characteristics are within the stone. So from my investigations, I found that the stone really hones into the warmer tones, definitely red and red oranges, and as well as the rings that it carries within the stone. So jumping into Procreate, this time I tried to sketch out some of my ideas first, just to get a loose idea of what I wanted to approach here. So I started using the lasso tool to create the shapes in a spontaneous manner. This round, I really wanted to try and be loose and not think about the piece too much, just to let things go. When creating the shapes, I wanted them to be organic and truly think about the images in my mood board, the Moroccan deserts, the flower petals, the volcano. I really wanted these shapes to kind of hone into those three things that I was thinking about. So very organic, but they have almost a raw feeling to them. But you can also get a hint to where I was coming from. The shapes began to come together in proximity, and they almost mimicked a volcano, which was very interesting because it was tying into the story of our inner fire. Metaphorically, we are volcanoes. We're quiet when we are not active. We are timid because we're afraid to pursue our true passions. Once we get active and discover our true selves, what sparks us, we begin to ignite like a volcano, where all of our blood flows, with passion, and we have the courage to take the risk and try something that sparks joy. And that was one of the stories that I really wanted to hone in on, because it's such a huge problem in today's world. To add a bit of perspective, I distorted the shapes and added a large shape in the back to speak to the Moroccan vibes and to bring some flow of direction to the piece. Add Moroccan-inspired texture with the stucco brush to really create that ancient feel, that really raw feel, that sandy feel. I began to play with the color scheme to keep the colors of the Carnelian stone, but also the warmth of the Moroccan culture. The color scheme, I used a gradation from cool to warm to signify our buildup of our inner fire, keeping the focal point to the center. I added a lot of fury to this piece using the brush tool, the Terrelay brush, to create a fiery flow feeling, that buildup again. To mimic the line work within the Carnelian stone, but also the desert feel, I came in with the Inca brush to bring movement and vibrational energy to showcase the energy buildup. Once again, it was about building up that feeling. To emphasize our inner fire, I added a pixel filter to showcase a cold flame coming alive again. I thought the contrast between the organic shapes to now the blocky pixels would bring a stronger focal point. Lastly, to ground the piece, I added some depth and brought in a darker brown shape to close off the piece. To me, overall, this piece almost feels like an inside of a human trying to channel with their inner self. So once I finished everything in Procreate, I took this piece into Illustrator, where I set up an 8.5 by 11 board and made 2 rectangle shapes sized at 4 by 6 inches. I put them beside each other, bumped together, and I created a grid down the center. And basically that little line down the center was my guide between the middle point of this card. And what I did was I merged the 2 rectangles together, and on each corner of the rectangle, I put 2 small lines that showcased the crop marks. And this was basically going to determine my actual size of the card. So for me, all I had to do was just place the picture on the right side of the card, because that was the front of the card, and on the back I would put in the actual details of the card, and any other messages I would put on the other side, but this is just a generic card. So now we're ready to print it, and once we have it printed on cardstock, I take it to my scoring board, and basically I use my scoring tool and I line everything up, find the center, and I make a little indent on art side up to see where the middle is. And I flip it over, and then I finish the indent all the way down the page. From there, I take it to my cutting board and I line up my crop marks with my ruler and X-Acto knife, and I cut it down to size. And now I grab my bone tool and we basically run the bone tool down the side of the card so that it folds nice and clean and seamlessly. And now we're ready to add some finishes. So this was all about adding a spark and reigniting our flame. So what I really wanted to do here was come in with my gold paint and highlight some of those ring lines, just little hints to really draw your eye into that focal point. And in the middle, it was time to put some gold glitter, because that feeling of a spark, there's magic that's happening. So we want to really enforce that. So this is where I really wanted to draw your eye in and really bring in that spark feeling. So brought in some glitter. I thought it was a nice touch, and that's pretty much it for this piece. And thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope that you guys have a really good day and keep smiling, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.